This episode of the podcast has been brought to you by Sweet Cheetah Publicity. Sweet Cheetah is an inclusive, socially conscious PR collective that puts their money where their mouth is. They have a current roster of bands that reads like a greatest hits anthology. Brainiac, Catholic School, Jawbox, The New Amsterdams, Oceans in the Sky. I mean, the list goes on and on. They also do PR for record labels such as A La Carte, Arctic Rodeo, Steadfast, Rad Girlfriend, and so many more. How do they pay it forward? How do they put their money where their mouth is? By generating thousands of dollars in annual charitable donations to the likes of Women in Vinyl, Coalition of Communities of Color, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and many, many more. The man has the receipts. I've seen them. It is real. The artists, labels, and podcasts Sweet Cheetah works with are curated with an eye on working primarily with friends. You could find Sweet Cheetah on all of the social media platforms, be it Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just look for Sweet Cheetah PR, and they will be there. He's been Tim, I've been Peter, and Sweet Cheetah has been beautiful.
Weekend, you'd been in a hell of a fight. I asked, aren't we too old for that shit? You smiled and said, okay, all right. I took that as an
Hello and welcome to a very special holiday edition of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. I'm your host, Peter, and I am still here. I'm very pleased to have my sometimes co-host and all the time bestie, Tara Van Flower of Lycia. On our combined show tonight, we have the one and only Pat Ogle, Padraic Ogl of Thanatos. Pat has been releasing music as Thanatos since the early 90s with Sam Rosenthal's Projekt Records. In that time period, he's created nothing but incredible music, be it Darkwave, be it punk, be it acoustic-based. Consistently excellent, well-written music. We love Pat over here. What we're listening to now is from Pat's Christmas EP, which just dropped, entitled Christmas Moments. Incidentally, this is not Pat's first Christmas EP. He had one years ago, back in 2013, called A Very Thanatos Christmas EP. In this episode, we get pretty snarky together. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of laughs. And I think I cleared up a few things about his time in the music industry and, the way he approaches music and some of the goings-on behind the scenes of some of my favorite albums that he has done, which was a treat, to say the least. I won't bore you with any more of the details. We'll get right to it. But this is Tara Van Flower and I interviewing Pat Ogle of Thanatos on the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. And a little P.S. If you would like to become a member, donate a little cash, I'll tell you at the bottom of the episode. Stay tuned. Broken on Tara and I getting very existential, and so the mood tonight is very, very mystical.
And all over the place.
Yeah,
I can't believe Tara's all over the place. That's crazy talk.
I know. I'm usually so laser focused.
So I guess catching you up on what we've been up to and talking about is a moot point because we're all.
I have to go get my copy of Being in Nothingness. Or...
we haven't gotten that bleak yet, but it's been definitely
What's up?
apropos for the season. But I guess the best way for me to start this with you is, believe it or not, you and I have met a couple times, Pat, over the years at shows and stuff. Just due to the fact that I've had a loose association with Projekt, doing street team stuff and going to Projekt fests. So there's a familiarity on my end anyway. But I've been.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen a picture of you, so I like Peter. You know, there's a lot of Peters. So
of course, yeah. I'm not expecting any recognition. But what it comes down to is your music has been in my life since 1993, and you know, I've been more than a casual fan. Just like with Lycia, Projekt didn't put out too many bands that I was very, very interested in, but the ones that did stuck with me, you know, since I was a teenager. Thanatos, Lycia, you know, Love Lies Crushing, you know, the very few, but the ones that did really did. And
shit,
you know,
I'm sorry, I'm having a cat problem here. Hold on.
That's okay.
It's funny, this cat comes in and my greyhound comes in.
I rearranged the front. I'm not going to tell you about what I was doing. You finished what you were talking about. I'm not going to talk about my cats.
Well, I have quite a few of them, so I feel your pain. But you know, the Endless Night Inside was an important one for me. But Blisters, that is such a varied and you know, amazing journey musically, sonically, because we have the glam of it all, like the David Bowie influence, even a slight Bauhaus influence, but even more so, there's just a real sense of rock and roll unfettered, the way you know, Bowie would have done it, the way T-Rex would have done it, mixed with everything from electronic infused things to trip hop. You know what I mean? Like there's
that record. It's the only record I have 9 records on.
Yeah,
and that is the only one that was exactly what I wanted it to be. The only thing that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to be is I actually wanted it to be. It's a fairly short record, and I wanted it to be longer. But we ran out of gas. I heard one night we were there recording, and we just had nothing left, and so it was what it was. It's also the only record that I don't think I play on it at all. I don't play an instrument on that record because it's like the rhythm guitar parts. Like, why the fuck am I going to play rhythm guitar when William Tucker's there? It's fucking stupid. It would be ego driven solely because there is no stringed instrument I could play better than him. And so why the fuck would I play? And so I didn't. We even had, you know, nobody else plays on that record at all. It's pretty much all him. It's a shit ton of samples too, though.
Yeah.
So,
and like let's take Dry Gray Whisper for example. That has as much to do with somebody like Soul Coughing or Massive Attack or one of those trip hop groups as it would with anyone that would have been associated with your music. Which, let's face it, anyone who got associated with you back in those days didn't sound like you or like Lycia or like, you know what I mean? Like they called it goth, they called it darkwave. I
was into goth music. Darkwave was kind of what I hung the name around my own neck because at the time goth was like fucking poison. And keep in mind, I love goth and I listened to all the goth music both then and now. Mm-hmm. But there was a certain aspect of it that, first of all, I didn't think it was accurate for the first 2 records, and then I didn't know what the fuck else to call it. And as I've gotten older, I was younger then, obviously, but I realized you don't have to call it anything,
no.
Because on the level that I'm working on, you know. Who cares? I mean, call it whatever the fuck you want. I don't care about any of that stuff anymore. But back then it was like kind of, I don't want them to call it goth because that's like death. I mean, it wasn't death if you sounded like, I mean, there were bands that were doing all right that were goth bands that played like straight up goth rock. And that was cool, but that's not what I did. And the worst thing in the world is to be popping into a venue to play a show and people think you're going to sound like the Sisters of Mercy. And that's not what I did. And again, I love the Sisters of Mercy, but it's not what I do. And so, you know, another thing about Blisters is that record, it freed me to work on the vocals a lot better, a lot more. I was very focused on getting the vocals right. We did a lot of really well done vocal molts, and I really was able to work on that and the lyrics. And I think that album has some of the best lyrics I ever wrote, actually.
Lyrically, that's my favorite record too, because there are lyrics that I still kind of like harken back to today, like twisting on a gibbet, trying to avoid a splinter. That's an incredibly powerful line that from the time I've heard it until I'm 46 now, it hasn't left my psyche. That's impressive to me, you know, that somebody could craft something like that so effortlessly that it plugs in.
It wasn't effortless though. It was effortful. And it's I don't remember all the details of how that record got recorded, but in some cases there was music that Tucker did and I wrote lyrics to. Like Splinters is Tucker had that chord progression, and I wrote the lyrics around that. That was pretty much it. And then other things, I came in with a basic song and he took it and rewrote it. But it was not always, it's not always an easy thing to like, because there's a point behind those songs. Like sometimes things I write are like just very abstract, and I think that what you think they say matters every bit as much as what I intended. That song has a very specific point. That song's about the breakup of Yugoslavia. Is what is it that song's about? Really?
No kidding. So, to me, it felt almost biblical in a way. There was something about it that felt very tied to biblical mythology, and also just that the hangman's noose is coming, you know, like impending doom. Like there's a lot of, like what I said, like there's trip hop influences, there's a lot of glam influence, I think, on that record. Real glam, not 80s glam, like glitter rock era glam. I feel it on that record. It's tactile to the experience for me when we were kids.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Pat, there's Pat, yay!
Yeah, there's something about my browsers that, like, my computer doesn't want to let me use certain browsers. But anyway,
you're a lot louder now.
You were waxing eloquent about Blister.
Well, yeah, I was just telling Tara, I kind of feel bad now because you didn't even play on the fucking thing, and I said I claimed it as my favorite record.
No, I don't. That's the thing is I mean, the most important thing I feel like about me being on any record is singing and writing. Those are the things that are important. And it's not that I can't play. It's just that I happen to be working with somebody who is like significantly better at me, and also had like a real vision for exactly crafting that particular record. And it also allowed me to focus on certain things. I mean, a lot of times I do vocals at like one take.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see the fucking point of doing a second take of the vocals, because it's like I've done situations where like the first couple records we would do like do it again, and I would do it like 15 times, and it's like it's all it does is get worse. And
sure.
So just do it, and just, you know, it's like I'm not Pavarotti, you know.
This is what you get,
right? And, you know, it's not. I mean, sometimes you go, oh,
yeah, right.
You know, but you know, failing that, or you just blatantly miss a note. But failing that, it's like the performance. You know, yeah. I'm not saying I nail it every time. Sometimes I do want to go back, but generally speaking, I found that I get it right if I'm prepared. I'm not always prepared, though. But yeah, I don't. That's not a problem. That's my favorite Thanatos record too. but it's largely because of the fact that it came out the way I wanted it to. And the reason it came out the way I wanted, it would have been much more of a struggle with me playing on it. And so I'm glad I didn't play on it. The first two records, the second one's always felt unfinished.
Yeah.
To me, because both of them have like 25 songs on them. And it like, I wanted to do different things with that second record, but some of my favorite songs are on that record too. I just always felt there was a lot of stuff that could have been removed from that record. There's actually some stuff I consider to be out and out garbage on that record. And part of that was me trying to help some other people who played on that record out, and they were like fucking useless. And so,
That's funny.
Yeah. And, there's no point in calling people out, but it was just, it's just that, it's pretty obvious if you have the fucking record.
Yeah, I do.
Opera in me says different.
Yeah.
And you know, they really are, in my opinion, phenomenal records, but it just,
I've never put out a record I did not like. But the other thing is, it's funny because I got the first two records transferred to digital, and the idea is that you can remix them and then repurpose stuff. And mostly it's for the purpose of like kind of getting it in movies or, you know, fucking in, you know, porno commercials or whatever, you know, I don't know. But it's something that will pay you money for doing it. And the reason is you have to mix an instrumental version of the record and a non-version, because when they're doing like a commercial or they're doing a TV show or a movie, they need an instrumental version as well as a vocal version.
Yeah, licensing is weird like that. I know.
Yeah, and so I did that, and I like there was I haven't done the Embassy to Gaius record, but I talked about doing it. I probably at some point I will. But I have to, those are all on tape, and so I have to bake the tapes.
Yeah,
and then pay to get them transferred, and then I'm not an engineer, and so somebody else has to do all the engineer shit. And so it's whether it actually happens or not. But revisiting some of those and adding to them or blah blah. And there's a wonderful meme out there somewhere on the internet, and if you look for it, you can find it, I'm sure. But it's like, it's basically saying, when you want to add to those old music files you found, and it's a picture of like a Scottish castle, and it has this prefab building attached to the side of it, and that's pretty much what that is. You know, that's just done. It's over. I'm not redoing any of it. It is how it is, and so I'm not going back. And I also, it gets in your, like, I understand why it happens, and it happens to me where you think like, I should go back and fix that, and it's like, fuck it, it's 20 fucking 8 years old. It's over. It's finished. That record is that record.
Well, you know what happens too is that people have gotten so used to hearing the crappy version that when you put out the good version of the song, they're like, but I like the original version better. It's like, really? Muddy shit that you can't even hear the bass part? Okay.
Well, this wouldn't be any better, believe me. Now, there's some things where we could change tracks and vocals, and there's some. I mean, most of the mixing on those records, I think Sam did that, and I think he did a pretty good job. That's not the problem. The problem is we pulled some backing vocals out and added other ones and did some other shit like that, and I just feel like that could change. And I also feel like insecure vocalists, there's something they do, and it's called reverb.
Yeah,
and they can make themselves sound. It's like, I sound like I'm singing from the bottom of a well with a fucking bucket over my head, and those records are drenched in it. I don't know what you can really do about that, but maybe something. And I think some of the reverb on not all the tracks, but some of them can be pulled out. The Blisters is the vocals are dry; they're like reverbless. And they're super compressed and dry as fuck. And so there's that contrast. I guess I was confident enough that I didn't feel like I needed the reverb anymore.
What's great about them is a lot of them are quiet but still dead out front, which was a really good production choice in my opinion.
And I think, I don't remember if I knew this I'd heard this at the time, but I'm pretty sure that I had, because I'm from Florida, and so Tom Petty, I'd hear things Tom Petty said. But Tom Petty apparently early in his career, he did an interview, and I was in like Rolling Stone or something, and he was like worried about the quality of his vocals and wanting to bury them in the mix and stuff. And apparently he asked Greg Allman about it, and he was like, put them right up front. Boom, right out there. Yeah. Don't worry about it, but out front. And I think that's kind of been how I feel about it. I think Blisters, the vocals in some songs are mixed a lot lower, but that's also intentional because there's a certain quality to some of those songs where you really want people to go, what? You know, like I really want you to stop and pay attention. So that there is that on not every song, but some of the songs, there's stuff like that. It's funny how I'm playing some acoustic shows, and it's surprising how many songs off of Blisters will be included, at least in some of those shows. Feast of Snakes, which you wouldn't think would translate to an acoustic show, but it kind of does. Splinters definitely does.
Definitely.
It's built around a guitar, like a rhythm riff, and it's a rhythm riff I can actually play. And then No Longer at Ease. That's the one I think I wrote I think the music is pretty much the basic part of that. That's the song I think I wrote most of that one. Whereas the other stuff I came in with stuff and it got changed drastically. I think that one stayed pretty much the same. Blisters would be cool to do, but it's a weird tuning, and I don't know how to tune the guitar.
Not only is it a weird tuning, but it's a weird timing.
Yeah, it is, and I have a hard time playing, as people who've recorded with me can attest, or played with me live. If it's in like
yeah,
there's just not in 4/4 or 3/4. There are problems.
No, to me, there's a very Eastern quality to it, and it's off time.
Yeah. I don't know what the signature is in that. I don't know. I'd have to listen to it.
I think it's 5/6.
It might be 5/8, but I'm not. It's kind of like almost like a jig.
Yeah,
it's slowed down, but I think that I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I've done other songs like that. There's a song called on the album, the only album I'd never released that didn't come out as a physical copy, that was a studio record, and there's a song called Homage to Catalonia on it. And I wrote it, and I couldn't play it in time because it's a jig rhythm.
I'm Not Job, right?
It is actually on The Exterminating Angel.
Oh, okay.
I'm Not Job actually was released physically, but
that got released physically. Okay.
Yeah, Exterminating Angel was never released physically. It was supposed to be, but I actually killed it. Sam wanted to do it, and then one night I got pissy and was like, "Fuck that!" And then I didn't release it for years. I think I played a show that was irritating to me for some reason. I was like, fuck everybody, I'm not even gonna do music anymore, y'all kiss my ass. And then like fucking 5 minutes later, I was like, when I sobered up, I was like, oh, that was fucking stupid, why did I do that? And then years later it comes out and nobody fucking listens to it because it was just this out of time thing. That's another one of the records. I love that record, and not very many people have actually listened to it, but that's Chris Connolly sings backing vocals.
Yes, he does. And, like kind of like a crowning jewel too. Chris Connolly,
he sings his backing vocals on 2 tracks on that album, and I love him. I think he's a genius.
Incredible.
But that song I can play sometimes signatures if you really like, just if I just clench my teeth and my colon and just try to bang it out. But for some reason, that kind of jig 5/8 Irish kind of sounding stuff is really hard for me to play. You think I'd be able to play Irish fucking songs, but no.
Right. But I think that you just have enough of that Bob Dylan school in you where you just kind of adhere to the almost folk traditions, although like it's far from folk. It's not that far either, because your country record is my second favorite record of yours, and it's a covers record. And
I like that record, and that record was supposed to be very different from what it was.
Really?
Yeah, it was supposed to. Sam was supposed to. Sam didn't necessarily agree to do this, but this is what was in my head: was we were going to take those acoustic tracks, and Sam was going to add keyboards, like make it a Thanatos country record with like weird ambient stuff in the background of the acoustic stuff. And but how we recorded it basically live. There's a live mic on my mouth, a live mic on the guitar, and then the direct guitar going into the board. And that doesn't necessarily lend itself to that because you can't pan there's all kinds of reasons why. I mean, William Faith recorded that. And when we were done, he was like, don't add anything to it. Just release it like this. He's like, have you ever done anything that's just all you? And I'm like, no. And he's like, just do this. Just do it like that. And I have spent decades with various artists, especially people on Projekt, then people I knew later. When they came up with something, they had a plan to do a record that, you know, maybe was going to make a little bit of money and stuff. And I would say, just do a simple record. Just do a fucking simple 4-track record, like Lycia's records, the earliest ones. Mm-hmm. Like, I had people tell me, like, oh man, the Ionia, the pristine recording quality. Didn't Mike record that on a Fostex 424?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. And it's like, going, yeah, that's pristine. No, it sounds great because he's fucking awesome and he wrote great songs. And it sounds great because he was freaking really good at working with that primitive ass monkey machine that he had. And he made, and that's, to me, I think those kind of limitations like will make great records where if you have all this. And so other people I've talked to, they won't do it. They're like, I'm going to spend 10 grand on the studio. I'm like, yeah, there goes all your money. You know,
Jimi Hendrix recorded every record except the last one with the Experience on fucking 4 tracks, man.
Yeah, well, back then everybody did because they didn't have anything else. I mean, right. like some of those Beatles records that have symphonies on them were recorded on 4 tracks because that's all there was.
Yeah, they just kept bouncing tracks.
Yeah,
but there's a reason why that country record resonates with me, not just because of the presence and you know the fact that it is just you, which is a very integral part of it, but there are 2 songs on it that kind of bookend my life, and it's kind of incredible that they're included on it because Townes Van Zandt is a big touchstone between my mother and I, who thank God is still with us. But the Highwaymen song, my father and I, that was legitimately our song, and we'd gone to see the Highwaymen together on that first Highwaymen tour.
Oh, really?
That song was a big, and my dad passed away like quite a few years ago now, but that song was a big deal between us. That and Cat Stevens, father and son. So if you put the Cat Stevens song on there, I would have shot myself probably when you put it.
Well, it wouldn't fit on the country song, but I will tell you, I've worked on. I was going to do a '70s cover record. Now I'm kind of rethinking that. I'm just like, well, you know, I don't want to limit myself. I just want to. I might just do another cover record of whatever the hell I feel like. And there's going to be. I mean, I love Cat Stevens.
Me too.
There's some Cat Stevens songs and Al Stewart songs. I always think of them together for some reason.
Yeah, well, you know what? They were part of that that whole era of you know, not just love and it was instrumentation with them. They were very much into their acoustic guitars and into the, you know, open recordings. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to think of which one of those 2 guys I like best. I mean, Year of the Cat is very definitely a song that I play, and Cat Stevens, there's so many of them. The one that's been covered to death is the one I really love, which is Peace Train.
Of course,
but I'm not doing that. I think there's a possibility I might do the Sing Out. Maybe. What do you think, Tara? Which one?
So I wanted to tell you this. I'm like waiting to interject. The songs that you sent me to listen to a few days ago. I don't know if you're talking about those yet or not, but Mike was listening to him as well, and he's like, "This sounds like Cat Stevens."
Everybody says I sound like Cat Stevens, especially now that I'm old and my voice is roasted.
Yeah. So like, well, now that I know that you like Cat Stevens, that would be a huge compliment then.
Yeah, I'm not trying to sound like Cat Stevens. And when we were recording that, when that one of the one, there's 2 Christmas songs is what we're talking about. I recorded 2 original Christmas songs, and I was pulling out teeth trying to write Christmas songs. I've been trying to write Christmas songs for years, and I booked time with William Faith to go in and record them. Well, then they were going out on tour, his band, the Bellwether Syndicate. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of ran into that. You know, it was like, can we reschedule this? And I'm like, we're putting it up against the freaking wire because we got to get it done before the end of September. Like tomorrow, it had to be done. hopefully I need to talk to Sam about that, make sure it's okay. But anyway, and when we recorded that song, I was like, and we were listening to the tracks back, I was like, sounds like fucking Cat Stevens. And he was like, it does. Yeah. Parts of it, not all of it. He seems.
You know, let him hear the songs. I think, especially the second one that you shared with me, I think that would be up his alley a lot.
The first song, the other one, there's two songs, and one of them sounds like the Dropkick Murphys to me.
Oh, no shit. That's funny that you mentioned the Dropkick Murphys, actually.
Speaking of very Irish.
I thought of you, Peter.
And but the Flogging, I mean, none of that stuff. Like, do I own any records by Dropkick Murphys or Flogging Molly? No, but I've seen them both live, and they're really fun to see live.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's kind of the MO of those bands. Are like,
well, you were always open to that, though. I remember when you were first putting together Precipice Records, and you were looking for everything from hardcore and punk bands to
and I didn't find any, and that was an unfortunate time period for trying to start a record label because it was like
feeding frenzy.
No, it was at the end of like distribution was dying everywhere, and the first couple things I put out, I had overseas distribution, which saved my ass, and then things went sideways fast, and then it was like that was when Napster and all of the digital stuff, and it was before you actually got paid. People bitch about like, oh, Spotify doesn't pay me that much. I mean, remember when they didn't pay you fucking anything?
Yeah,
stole your fucking music. Remember that? And so.
Yes, I do, because I had to go get a job.
We all did. We all fucking did. Yes.
Nobody listens to my goddamn music anyway. Everybody can go fuck themselves. My music. But I mean, you know, the thing that got me back into doing music. I mean, I didn't do. Let's see, what was it that the I can't remember which record it was, but there were two of them. The I Am Not Job record took a very long time to get done, probably like 4 years, because I lived in Florida. I was popping up here and recording and Greg Lucas, who has a band called Manipulator, just think of Manipulator with no vowels. It's MNL, and you can see find his stuff on Bandcamp, and he did a lot of the recording on that. But it was like I didn't live here, and and I had some stuff already recorded, and it wasn't in very good shape, and had to be fucked with. And then I did some songs with the guy Jason Donnelly, who lives out in LA. He was DJ Puzzle back then, PLP Loops. He does a lot of loop library stuff now, and I'd love to do some music with him, but whether he has time to ever do it with me, it's a matter of question. But so there's a lot of stuff from different people and trying to get it all together. And then the next record was Exterminating Angel, which was like Chinese Democracy. It took like 10 years.
And I thought Portland took a long time, but actually that came off the back of that stuff, right?
Yeah, Portland. I released Coyote in the Graveyard. Mm-hmm. Well, the Exterminating Angel came out digitally, and then Coyote in the Graveyard came out in 2020, and then Portland, I think, came out the next year.
Yeah.
But we recorded that in 2 sessions in Portland, which is why it's called Portland, more or less. And then the country thing came out. So I released a record 3 years in a row, which is like crazy.
See, the thing is, I missed out on the Coyote in the Graveyard record and went right into Portland and then backtracked.
Well, Coyote in the Graveyard, I really like that record. That record is the one where I don't really pay hardly any attention to the lyrics at all. And you know what the funny thing is? That record was supposed to be all peaches and cream and optimism. Mm-hmm. And I wrote the one song, the title track, and then like the world kind of went to shit. And so it was like, there goes all my fucking optimism. And so the rest of it isn't very optimistic, but it's not really lyrically driven. It's kind of a peculiar record, but I really like how it turned out. It's impossible to play pretty much any of that live because it would not work. It's all kind of weird. Like there's the song Something to Tell You is like, I got something to tell you. It's the same thing over and over and over. It'd be really tedious live. Mm-hmm. And then some of the other stuff is like just like a ribbon controller, and it's like it just wouldn't be very interesting live either.
Yeah, but it's very creative. Listen,
I think it's a really good record, but it's not. I sometimes play the title track and the rest of it. It'll never be. I mean, if I ever lose my mind and put together a band, maybe. But
So
you can tell I'll be wearing a pair of underwear on my head. You'd be like, it's fucking mine. Start a fucking live band and go out and play and lose money.
Yeah,
Nope.
go straight up
Albuquerque.
Go straight up Red House Painters, and just fucking hire a band and implode.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always hire, like, that's everybody. Anytime we did the little tours, it was a hired band. I mean, Tucker was paid to go out on tour, and Eric Paulson was too. And any other little things I did like that, it was the same thing. When I play in town, usually people are doing me a favor. But I haven't played live with a band outside of Chicago since the 90s.
Jesus.
And I figured out since I moved back here in 2005, I have played 4 times outside of Chicago. And I played in Portland once, which sucked. And like I'm never putting myself in that position ever again. It was at a dance night, and I wound up it was supposed to be at like 8:00, and I'm like, I'm playing at 8:00. And then it wound up getting pushed back, and I wound up playing after it was like all the dance club goth people were there. And and the fact is, like, I don't blame the people that come because they don't fucking want to see me, which is why I wanted to play early. And it's like, and
then they should stay home.
Well, no, but it was a goth night that was having a band early. It was I'm not gonna. It was Ashkelon's being sound checked for like 3 hours, and then they were playing, and then I played, and like they played after, and it just ruined the whole goth. And like if I were like 20 years old going to the goth place, and that happened, I'd have been pissed. And so it's like you got to keep your fucking shit together in those sorts of situations. And then I played twice. I played twice in Austin, Texas, and I would go if somebody wants to freaking give me a sandwich to go play anywhere in Austin, Texas, I will go there because the people that go to concerts there, the young people, all of them are fucking awesome. I played opening for DJ Z Trip.
That's awesome. Holy shit.
And it's like the guys before, and then I walk out with an acoustic guitar, and I'm thinking, man, in Chicago or anywhere else in the country, they bottled me off of the stage, and they all sat down and listened. They were cool, and that's what the music kind of. I mean, it could be totally different now.
It's a music town,
and they were
always
fucking cool. And when people were coming up to me at record stores and shit when I was out the next couple of days I was there, and coming up and saying how much they liked it, and they're like, and it just wouldn't fly anywhere else. And so I'll go there, play anytime anybody wants. But I am doing shows. Like, did I mention that?
Yeah,
Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Chicago. And I can predict how these shows are going to go in advance if you like my psychic.
Do it.
Or my psychic underpants. I can get that. Pittsburgh is going to go very well. I'm playing with a guy named Dave Dramedy out of Los Angeles, and he's pretty much the reason I'm doing this because he played with Caroline Blind.
Yeah.
And her and I briefly talked about maybe doing some shows, and she had better shit come up than playing with me. And it's hard to imagine worse shit than being stuck playing with me. But then Dave contacted me, and I was kind of like, yeah, sure, book some shows. And I thought he's not going to book me. And then he booked 2 shows like immediately. It's a little embarrassing because like it took me forever to book Chicago, but that was partly because Sarah, who booked the show, Scary Lady Sarah, booked the show, was out on tour for like a month before, and so it's like I'm not going to call her up. Oh, I know you're in Salt Lake City in a van, like brushing your teeth in a freaking gas station. But could you call and book my show for me? And it's like I'm only going to bother people so much about that. But here's my psychic prediction: the Pittsburgh show is going to go lovely because there's a band called Charming Disaster. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah,
they are headlining
band. I know.
Dave is playing first. I'm playing second. Charming Disaster is playing third, and it's at a dance macabre. It's at a coffee house. I think I'm pretty sure it's all ages. If not, I think it's 18 up. I don't know. I'd have to look at that, but I think and that's always great. So I think that's going to go pretty well. I think that'll be a nice show, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing Charming Disaster after I listen to their music and shit. They played here on Friday, and I wanted to go. Nobody would go with me. Like I couldn't get anybody to go, and I was like, I didn't know where the place was. I didn't feel like going there by myself. And usually I go everywhere by myself, but I just wasn't in the mood. And so Detroit, it's one of those things I went. It's a venue, is like a respectable venue. I've heard, I haven't played there, but I know other people have, and they said they're real professional and stuff. But they don't have us listed. We're not listed on the website. So I'm like, it's like me and Dave, and I've told people repeatedly, like, you do not want me being the main act on any of these things. And people think I'm like slagging on myself, but it's like, I know what my like best case scenario draw in most cities are 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and now. I could pretty much come up with a pretty solid number. So you really need a third band, and we just couldn't find one. And the same thing in Chicago. So I'm curious how the Detroit show shows out. The Chicago show is, I don't know. It's at G-Man Tavern, which is a cool place. And but again, it's just me as the final of the two acts, and I'm like, really need somebody who doesn't suck to bring people out to the show.
See, but like there was a time when Chicago would have been the spot for you.
I mean, because I lived here and I played here and I was always out and about. But I'm like, when you get like half the people I knew that used to come out to the shows don't live here anymore, and the other ones, they're all older and they don't go out to shows at all anymore. And so you're relying on younger people, and there's a lot of like the younger people that are into the kind of music, they don't know who the fuck I am, so they're not coming out to see me. But if you had a third band on that bill, and the only reason this show, both of those shows, keep in mind, I am not blaming anybody but me, because it was I had to find somebody, and I just couldn't find anybody right. I found, people would recommend bands, and I'd do some research on them. I'm like, going, they don't draw any more than me, so what's the point? Mm-hmm. And so come to those shows at Smalls in Detroit and G-Man Tavern in Chicago. It'll be very intimate, I have a feeling.
Well, you're attacking it as such too, though, correct? You're just going out there with a guitar and
and I'll be honest, it's funny because that's a real battle for me to do that. It's like walking out there butt naked to me. Like, I would rather walk out there butt naked and do an interpretive dance than walk out with just me and a guitar. And that's how I do it all the time now. That's why I don't play that often, because it's like
both.
I mean, perhaps.
It works.
I always tell everybody they're bolting the doors from the outside when I start playing. But it's not because I think I play. I'm like, when I'm on and everything's good, I'm perfectly fine and I do well. But like, I break a fingernail and things can go sideways fast, and it's kind of all on you when you're just standing there with a guitar. Yeah. Whereas if you have a band and you fuck up or something goes sideways for you, other people can kind of step in and cover your ass. Whereas if you're just there on your own, it's a little bit more difficult. And so it always makes me a little bit nervous, and I usually do fine, especially when I'm doing what I'm doing now. I have the sets worked out. I have been playing like crazy, and so I'm not likely to be a total disaster at any of the shows. I'm always, I usually play fairly well, but it's just I would rather have a band, but then I'd have to have a band.
Right. And, I think that the country record came off so fucking well, like as sparse and as intimate as it is, that I think so much of your catalog would translate. It's just a matter of translating it. You know what I mean?
Some of it does, some of it doesn't. And sometimes you just kind of have to sit down and try to, like, there's songs that people would, off the first record, there's a couple people that used to request the song My Love Is Death. And I remember one time years ago we were playing, and Eric, who played bass for us, was like, this guy kept saying, he needs to play that. He needs to play. And he turned to him and he's like, Pat doesn't know how to play that song. Like, I don't know how to play that song. He's never played it live. He's never going to play it live. And the reason is that I tried and it doesn't work. Speaking of Chris Connolly, I remember when I met him many, many years ago at the Troubadour in LA, which is also where I met William Tucker. He wouldn't remember this, but I basically, there's a song called Spoon-Fed Celeste off of Shipwreck. And I said, I love that song. Why don't you play it live? And he was just like, we tried. It just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have a great song. I'm sure there's Lycia songs you would have way about, where it's like it sounds fantastic. It's the best song on the record, but you can't play it live.
Can I tell you, Mike figured out how to play Ionia on acoustic guitar? It's crazy.
I would love to hear that.
Sounds
I would
good.
love to hear that too. That's my introduction to Lycia, because I got the cassette.
Me too.
Came out when it came. Well, you know the story, Tara. When it came out, I got it and it was on cassette, and it just grabbed me. But there was a handful of records on that label that really grabbed me, and it was Lycia and Thanatos and Love Lies Crushing, and that was
who I really like on Projekt right now. There's a lot of stuff that's ambient that I think is really high end kind of ambient stuff. I would normally have cats jumping on me, but they're not right now for some reason. Because this is where they go to jump up into the loft, and so I'll be talking to somebody, a cat will run by and jump up behind me, or jump on me when they're trying to get out of the loft. Paulina Faye.
She's such a sweetheart.
I interviewed her. I'm writing a piece for the Projekt website. I haven't finished it yet, but I loved her new record. It's absolutely lovely.
I knew her because she used to write to me back in the 90s, and we were pen pals. And so I knew her from being an artist. I had no idea really she did music until, of course, the whole Projekt thing. But like, that blows my mind because I know her as an artist.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know. I heard the music and I didn't know what happened is that Sam, I was writing I did, Peter and who else did I write about? The Scandinavian guy whose name's eluding me. And both of those records are fantastic. Peter Fippen's record, and then it's the Inversions record, and it's a dude. All he does is play guitar, and it's really fantastic, kind of experimental, ambient-ish stuff. But I'm much more driven to kind of vocal music. This stuff, the Adelaidean did a record that kind of sounded like lo-fi music, as opposed to some of the stuff he does that's ambient. And obviously the lo-fi singing record was the one I liked the most, but I like the other stuff too, so I interviewed him as well. But Paulina Faye, I just heard her music and I asked Sam to include her on the list of people to interview, just because I thought I loved the music so much. I actually sent her an email saying, "Do you play live?" And she was like, "No, but I'm she's not opposed to it." And I'm thinking, man, if I could find one more band, hint, to do a show here in Chicago, I would do like a mini little show here. I would set it up. But there's some people that will never, ever come and play. And Tara and I, when we talk sometimes, we go back to our, we come up with all these fantastical plans and stuff, but we're never really going to actually do them. We're going to get a magic unicorn and have a festival.
Like just said today, if we ever get past the whatever of playing live, it won't be Lycia, because there's too many expectations with Lycia. People want to hear electric Lycia. It will never happen because you have, like you said, you have to have a band, So if it happens, it'll just be the two of us, a microphone, and a guitar, and that'll be it. Hey.
Fuck what people expect. It's you do what you do, and it's that's the other thing is that we're talking about records, but we started mercifully we have talked about newer records like Portland and stuff like that, but I don't do many interviews, and I've done a couple podcast things and stuff, and most of the time I've done these interviews with people who didn't know anything about what I did.
That's strange.
But it's actually cool because they ask about the new stuff. Whereas a lot of times with the people that are they were really into Projekt in the 90s, all they want to talk about is the first two records.
Well, the thing is
about 30 years ago. I'm not focused on those. What happened? How did you do this on that record? I'm like I fucking remember. I was drunk all the time back then.
Well, the fact of the matter is I've been with you from the beginning. And Blisters is one of my two favorites, but my second favorite is a covers record you just did.
That's the most recent record. And that
record, and it feels very immediate. It feels very real, and it feels tactile. It's immediate. It's right now.
Well, that record's funny because it got I hired a publicist for it, and I haven't had a I've never. I was a publicist, so I rarely would hire a publicist. But I hired him just to see. And unfortunately, it was like he did a lot of goth stuff, and he did everything he could for it. But it was like going to all these goth people who were like, they didn't know what to do. Either they hated it or they didn't know what to do with it. And a couple of people who wrote these kind of half-assed, snarky reviews that were like, they weren't trying. They were like not being. One of the guys wrote, "I'm going, bitch, I'd slap the shit out of you if you were in front of me for writing that." And it's not because they hated it. I don't mind hate. If you hate it, like I just can't stand people who are mealy mouth. If you fucking hate something I did, my favorite reviews are the ones who are like, this is the suckiest shit I've ever heard. At least they have the balls to say it. I just can't stand people who are like fucking mealy mouth motherfuckers like that. And,
or like completely miss the point. Like,
yeah,
that used to drive us crazy because you'd put out this record that's about like this deep thing that you've been through, and it's like walking through the catacombs in the cop. Like, what? Did you even listen to the record? Like no.
Fold yourself in half and fuck your own face if you're gonna write shit like that. Because in all honesty, when Blisters came out, I was doing a fanzine at the time, and I was doing Projekt street team shit too, but that record fucking really mattered to me. And the review I'd written about it wasn't just like, this is cool, this happened here, like the stupid ass punk fanzine bullshit that people do. I truly extolled the virtues of it because there was so much of, like, in my opinion, Bowie's Berlin era involved in it, mixed with what was at the time current trip hop influence, mixed with industrial influence, and just straight like guitar rock in the middle. And there was nothing about it that smacked of what it got aligned with, which was the Darkwave and goth stuff.
Well, it was a pretty dark record in many ways, but it's also, the funny thing about that record is that I lost my words there for a second, but it's like I mean, we sat there recording it, and we would like sit there and like a couple of times I wound up getting so wasted I couldn't actually sing anymore. But we would sit there and listen to like freaking P-Funk and Herbie Hancock and stuff while we were listening to that record. And I kind of like that. I'm working on writing a new record, and I may play some songs out from it, but the idea of the record is that to do something different, like vocal stuff, I need drum beats, and I need like just a rhythm part, a drum rhythm part done. And then to write around that and then add to it. And that's what I want to do, not with the entire record, but with at least part of it. I think it's going to bounce back and forth between kind of like the acoustic, like the Portland style. Portland was the first record I did with Sam Rosenthal since Embassy to Gaius. He's on Blisters a little bit, but not a lot. So we hadn't done a full record together for like 26 years or something like that. And we kind of went back to doing it how we used to do it. It worked just pretty. We recorded that whole thing in about a week over a period. Like I went out there for 4 days and then I came back a year later for 4 days. So it wasn't like,
but there's something about Portland that feels very complete, and it feels like it was hashed out. Like there was no half-assing going on. Embassy to Gaius doesn't feel half-assed either, but Portland really feels like a solid record.
Yeah, and we did, and it's also like both of us have kind of gotten better at doing stuff. Sam's like a really good producer, and I would like flub a guitar part where I would like I'd have a string dead or something, and I'd be like, fuck, I gotta, like, back in the days of tape, you'd have to go back and play the whole fucking thing again for that.
Yeah.
And he could go, oh no, wait a second. You'd plug a note in. And it's like, it saves a lot of time when somebody can do. And I know William Faith did that a bunch of times for me on the stuff that, the country record and this, but it's like, it's not that you can't do it. It's just that it's very time saving to be able to.
The country record's so warm, you would never think there was any Pro Tools correction going on.
There's a few corrections. There's not minor things. They're almost all of those are just like you hit a chord like 3/4 of the way through the song, and you're like, your fingers on, you're fretting the a note or something, and so you need to fix it or to live with it. And I don't like living with it. There are other friends of mine that recorded stuff with me, and we're like, it's part of the charm of the record. It's like, no, it's wrong. It's wrong, and it can't.
It will haunt you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I listen to stuff. I won't say which song, but there's a song on Coyote in the Graveyard that there's a part on it that the song is really good, and there's a fretted note in one of the chords, and I'm like, I can't listen to it. It drives me insane. And nobody but me notices it, so I won't say the song.
What is it? Buzz? It buzzes off the fret,
or what? Buzz. It's just dead. There's a dead note, and so it's like, and it could sound like maybe I meant to do it, but I didn't, and I know I didn't. So,
well, and this brings me to Los Angeles 92 to 95 too. They're like another covers thing, which I don't want to like beat the covers.
That's just something put out there for fucking Spotify.
I thought that was just a ton of fun because you're covering body count, like you're stretching yourself, like and getting out of a box that people probably like, people like me who kind of grew up listening to what you did. Like, number one, it looks like the cover of X Los Angeles.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Yeah, of course, and like interesting set of covers, but really like what caught my ear was the body count cover.
Well, they're all pulled off of the first couple of records.
Yeah.
And so it's like, maybe, I don't know if there's anything. Yeah, actually they're all, because that's why it's Los Angeles, because they were all recorded in Los Angeles. There's a Clash cover, and there's, I forget what else. Clash.
My first concert was the Clash.
Don't Fear the Reaper, I think, is on there too.
Yeah, Blue Oyster Cult.
The live version of that's way more fun, I think. But the I don't remember, but the body count thing, and I wrote about this because it's like the biggest streaming thing. Like, it streams more than all my other shit combined. But that came out at the time that song came out. Remember, everybody went ape shit because a black man wrote a song called Cop Killer. Now, forget the fact that he's not saying I kill cops. He wrote a song like David Bowie isn't a fucking spaceman, and he wrote songs about spacemen. Johnny Cash was never in prison, and he wrote songs about being in prison.
Folsom Prison, yeah.
I found it annoying, and so I did this mashup of the lyrics from that song and from a Bruce Springsteen song called State Trooper, which is basically about the same
from
thing.
Nebraska.
Yeah, and I hate Bruce Springsteen, and I think he is like Bob Dylan, who's been hit in the head with a 2x4 a couple of times. And are there good Bruce Springsteen songs? Yeah, the man's been around for 30 years. So yeah, there's some good Bruce Springsteen songs, but I've never been a fan. But I was making a point that Bruce Springsteen can say it because he's the boss.
And he's white.
And Ice-T and Body Count says it. And it's like the end of the world. And so
because Moses came on TV and he was the head of his label and said, die, pigs, die.
Yeah. Well, then we went to get permission, and like Sam got a cell phone number and called it up, and it wasn't a cell phone number, it was a number, and it turned out to be Ernie C's cell phone. And he asked him, like, can we use your song? And he's like, yeah, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And we sent it to Bruce Springsteen, like through Harry Fox or whatever. And what we got back from them was like, no, not like a correspondence saying we prefer you didn't use this because Bruce Springsteen is, they sent us a freaking cease and desist order. Like, we hadn't even done anything yet. And so I already hated Bruce Springsteen. So, and it pushed the release of that record back by a month. Because we had to go back and redo it. And I wish I had gone in and we just made up lyrics. It was supposed to, and so the whole point of even doing that song was ruined in that because of that. And so like, then I had a new personal reason to hate Bruce Springsteen. And I've never liked his music. I've never liked the whole vibe. It's almost like the Grateful Dead kind of stuff. Like, if it brings people joy and they love it, good, more power to them. But I hate it. I hate with a fiery passion.
No, and I'm not in the E Street Band, so you're not going to offend me.
But then what happened is that song comes out, and there's another point to that. And people think you're saying, "Oh, they can't play." No, it's not that they can't play. I just hate them. There's a lot of you play music like crazy.
Yeah,
but I hate them. I hate them. I'd rather be on fire than listening to their music.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. The point is, here you have a hip hop artist does a hardcore song,
and it is a hardcore song.
It's not a rap song about killing cops. And then I try to juxtapose it with a Bruce Springsteen song, and I do it as close as I could get to, like, we did a beat and did it almost like as close as, you know, white guy from Florida can get to doing like rap. It's like the bad rap of the hip hop artist's metal song, juxtaposing these two things. And so all of that was ruined by Bruce Springsteen, and also by me. I could have gone and found a Johnny Cash song or something and done it, but I didn't think of it. So that's on me. I shouldn't blame Bruce Springsteen for that.
Well, it's not the first time you've done something hip hop adjacent. I'm going to be honest with you. If we go back to Blisters and we go, you know, Dry Gray Whisper has,
that's not hip hop though.
The vocal delivery has rhythm or rhythmic tendencies that are hip hop adjacent. I'm not saying you rapped it. I'm not saying you rapped it, but the delivery was so rhythmic and definitely so staccato that it had similarities to.
But it's much more singing than it is.
No, I'm not saying you're not singing. You're definitely singing, but there is a delivery to it that lends itself to that. You're very aware of, you know, hip hop and trip hop and not maybe directly informed by it, but you can definitely appreciate it. And that's
I love hip hop music, and going back a long time, and I still listen to it now. Tara and I talk about that, you know.
I know you like Public Enemy, right?
Yeah, I like Public Enemy, but I like a lot of new, like, you know, I mean, I like, you know, I mean, Chief Keef. I like Chief Keef stuff. Sure. I like
you gotta like Kendrick.
Yeah, he's all right. I mean, I like Joey Badass. What's his name? St. John. I like St. John. This first time I heard him, it's gotten a little bit away from me. In the more recent stuff I've heard, it's not bad. It's just not the kind of stuff I want to listen to. And I like political stuff. I mean, I like stuff that has a sense of humor. Also, I'm a big fan of Tyler, the Creator.
Oh yeah, he's phenomenal. He's as punk as it gets, though. He signs hardcore bands to his label, man.
Yeah, but you don't like, the thing is, like, generally speaking, old white guys should not try to emulate that. You can listen to it, but don't try to emulate it. It's
informed. I said informed, not emulated.
Yeah. I'm not saying you said that. I'm just saying, like, I listen to it, but I try to keep it far away from what I do musically. Although Tara is putting out a drill album, I understand.
I don't even know what that means.
Oh, Tara, drill.
That's a Chicago thing.
Yeah, it's a Chicago via England, London, England thing.
Go check out Chief Keef.
That's a good start.
You might like Chief Keef. There's some other guys that the names elude me because I've gotten into more recently and I've forgotten about them. I do playlists on Spotify and put them out there, and anybody can listen to them, but I mainly do them so I remember stuff that I've heard recently. And so I have a couple that are pretty heavy on Chicago drill bands and stuff. Bands, you know, I'm a dude. It's not a band. And a lot of times people work in collective groups. You know, that goes back to the. And we talked about this, I think, when Tara and I talked. Did we talk about hip hop? Did we talk about like that the Netflix? The Netflix documentary on hip hop.
Oh, so good. Oh,
yeah, it's great, but it cleared up a mystery that 16-year-old Pat needed solved. Because I remember reading about these groups, these hip hop groups out of Brooklyn and out of places, and I read about them, and then I would go to the record stores, and you couldn't find the records. And then I found out watching that documentary, the reason you couldn't find the records because there weren't any records. Nobody would put out their records. So they were like passing cassettes back and forth to each other and playing live shows. And all these people were showing up, and the music industry was still too stupid to recognize what they were doing was brilliant. And you know, I think the first record I bought that was anything like that is everybody was my age will say the same thing. It was The Message.
Yeah, The Message, Furious 5, brother.
12 inch that. And
yeah.
I mean, a lot of people have bought like Rapper's Delight, which came out a little bit earlier than that, but that's garbage.
Yeah, it's pop, it's disco.
Yeah, and I didn't think much of that, and I thought even less of it after I saw the documentary of how it came into being. But that's
it's product. It's product.
Yeah, that's a really great documentary. And as it goes on, you find, I mean, as it spreads to other places, like I knew, like some of the areas I didn't know much about, like New Orleans, I didn't know a lot about what went on there. I did know Atlanta, some of the people who came out of Atlanta, and obviously New York and LA. But then when they started moving around to other places, it was a lot of stuff like the Texas stuff. I knew some of the bands, like, you know, I mean, New Orleans is like, I know Master P and that stuff, but like, I didn't know the whole story of the whole thing. So it was like kind of like that Hardwood Highway show, but for hip hop.
You didn't really know much about the Fifth Ward Rap-A-Lot Records
I
Texas
didn't know that
thing.
stuff. I mean, I knew some of the music here and there, like a song here and there, but I didn't know the story. And like Atlanta, I knew a bit more about it.
See, because Ghetto Boys were a big deal.
Like I knew that there were a couple songs by them that I remember they were big.
Mine's Playing Tricks on Me and stuff. Yeah. But there was a deep history of what we now know as horrorcore.
Yeah.
That really found impetus in Houston, in the Fifth Ward of Houston, Texas. That, you know, kind of bridged the gap between what a lot of people would consider, you know, death metal lyrics embedded in hip hop beats and shot through the lens of what people would consider gangster rap. And I don't. To me, it's more like, you know, like a horror film set to beats.
Right. And a lot of times people got really down on the stuff, these lyrics that were violent and stuff, but it's like people like writing stuff about what they saw and what they experienced, like outside their fucking window. I mean, if that offends you, then go fuck yourself, as far as I'm concerned. And it's the same thing. Like they're offended by it, but they're not offended by it if it's Johnny Cash, and they're not offended by it if it's other people like that. And I'm not. And so wonder what the reason is. I know people think like they hear that. I mean, I like, you know, hip hop music. They're probably like, what the hell, you know? And it's just like when people would meet me after they heard the first two records and thought I was gonna be sensitive.
The only thing I thought was this guy likes Peter Murphy and probably you know, David Bowie and T-Rex. You know, that was what I thought. I'm a
huge David Bowie fan. By the way, I went to see that movie today, and I hate it.
It was terrible. It sucked a lot of
absolute. It made me want to light myself on fire. I wanted to get up and leave, but I'm like, I'm sticking it out, and it's just
why.
I don't know. Well, first of all, it's not a documentary. It's like it's structural, just a mess. It's like they show songs, partial songs, and sometimes almost a whole song, and then they overlace them with bits and pieces of interviews, and then they show pieces from movies he was in, and sometimes pieces from movies that he had nothing to do with, and then they do this psychedelic light show thing every once in a while over the talking and the music, and there's never any context for anything. They don't really focus on the songs. It's kind of chronological, but it keeps backsliding, but it's not really.
It's not
and it's
chronological.
Like, it's uninformative. There was maybe one selection of live stuff that I hadn't seen before. And there was all the other stuff. I'm like, that's from an album.
Yeah.
That's from, and it's just like, it was not interesting at all. It was fun. It was absolutely boring. And if you can make David Bowie boring, man, you suck. That's a talent.
I told my wife it was fruitless exposition. Those were my exact words.
Did you ever see Marlena, which was the documentary that Maximilian Schell did? And he did it about Marlena. He was going to do a documentary about Marlena Dietrich, right?
Yep.
And so at the last minute, Marlena Dietrich tells him, "Fuck you, I'm not appearing on camera." And he's got all his funding, everything's done. So how do you make a movie about Marlena Dietrich where she's not on camera, and he does it, and it comes off reasonably well. So all I can think of, because the director is, I didn't realize a friend of mine sent me a thing when I was ranting about it on Facebook that he some of the other movies he did, and they're quite good. So I'm wondering if like the archival material he was given maybe wasn't quite as good as he'd hoped.
Yeah.
And maybe that's it. But I just, and it's also like David Bowie interviews are often not very.
He was on coke.
Well, the coked up parts of it, that's fine, because I think that's, I don't mind.
Yeah, but he was.
But it's like, but there's all that, he's not real informative about himself, because he was like, it was, and so it's not, it's, and it self contradicts, and things are taken out of context, and there's things that he says this, and this, and I'm like, I know all that to be demonstrably false at a later date, and so it's like, and then allowing like the notion of like he did Let's Dance, and then was angered by the pop aspects of it, and went back to being experimental. Well, then how do you explain Tonight and Never Let Me Down?
Yeah,
and it just
if you want to discuss the album Let's Dance, at least get into the fact that he involved Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then Stevie Ray Vaughan was pissed because in the video for Let's Dance, Stevie Ray Vaughan wasn't even playing guitar in it, and there was a big fallout, and there was like that turned into a whole fucking thing.
Well, I always wonder, they said that on when Bowie did that tour, and I don't know if this is true, but he offered Stevie Ray Vaughan union wages to go on the tour.
Yeah,
and he was insulted, and I'm like going, my guess is that's offering somebody something they won't take, so they'll go away.
Yeah, that's how it felt, and that's why I don't respect that album, just because I like Stevie Ray Vaughan and respect him. I
don't give a shit about Stevie Ray Vaughan, but I think that record has some very good songwriting on it, and it's very well produced. I think there's like songs like Ricochet, and Let's Dance are really good songs. And then there's that song that's there was the cover of the song that had just right before that record came out, the Criminal World. I forget what is their name? Metro. I can't remember the name of the band, but it was banned. It was banned by the BBC.
Mm-hmm.
And I always admired the fact that David Bowie right afterwards was like, okay, I'm going to do it. Let's see if the BBC bans my fucking song. And of course they didn't. And so it's like, I always thought that was cool too. That's also a very cool song. I forget the name of that band. I can't remember the name of the band.
If there's a Stevie Ray Vaughan album, or I'm sorry, a Bowie album I could throw away, that's the one.
Never Let Me Down to me is the only David Bowie record that I don't like.
Really?
And there's a couple songs on it that are okay, but I think it's a production mess, which is shocking for him because his records are usually so incredibly well produced. I mean, Tonight has like the feel of like the fact that half of it is Iggy Pop covers. Maybe it's, nothing wrong with Iggy Pop, but it's just like, it just seemed kind of like, like he had a big contract with RCA or BMG or wherever the hell it was.
Yeah, and that his version, that China Girl thing was that was all there, but
yeah, well, I mean, you look at those records, the next 3 records he did all have Iggy songs on them.
Sure, of course.
Tonight is an Iggy song, and then he did Neighborhood Threats on that same record, and then the next record is Bang Bangs on it, and none of them are particularly great versions of the songs. Maybe Iggy needed some money, and David was trying to get him some publishing money. I don't know.
That sounds about right.
I mean, that's bullshit. I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway,
that sounds right for Iggy, because
we were talking about like influence. Like, can you say what your influences are, Tara? I can't say.
No, not really, because like Mike talks about this a lot. How when you're a young musician, you like want to sound like the bands that you like, but then once you're really in it, you almost start mimicking yourself. Like you're no longer influenced by anybody but your own self and like what you do. Like there's people who are huge influences on me on a personal level, but as far as what I do, no. Like, I have no desire to want to sound like somebody else. That's why, like, it never makes sense to me why there's 18,000 goth bands that sound like Sisters of Mercy. Like, what is the...
Yeah, I don't get that. I love that. See, like, I was last couple of nights, you know, my friend Sarah, Scary Lady Sarah, does a DJs a lot and plays with her syndicate, but she does a stream. And I always listen to her stream because she plays the old stuff too, but she also plays a lot of new goth bands. And the ones I really like are ones that they're and there's a lot of them that are adding something to the conversation that's not just what you said. That's not just like Sisters of Mercy. And I don't get it either, and I don't see the point. And I understand. And there's a lot of the Cookie Monster voice stuff, you know, that they do. That's like very
take me,
very German. And it's like, and I can't remember all the bands that sound like that originally, but it's just like, it's kind of like they exist already. So why do that?
Yeah. And it's like Jarbo is a huge inspiration for me on a personal level, but like, why would I even attempt to try to do what she does and like ever even think I could pull that off? Like, what would be the point in that?
Well,
that's the difference. That's the difference between emulation and influence.
Well, I try to rip people off all the time.
Shut up.
I do. I'll like go like, I'm gonna rip that off. But here's what happens is when I'm in the process of ripping a guitar part off, I can't play it like them. And so I do it. It's totally different. There was a song on one of the first two records that I was totally trying to cop Aha vocals on it. But I can't sing like that guy. So it comes out totally different. And it wasn't like I said, I want to sound like Aha. It was like in this particular song at this particular point, that is what the vocals should sound like. And I try to do it and I get it close. And so like I do that kind of thing occasionally, but I don't like, there's no art. It's not like I sat down and say, I want to sound like Amy. You wouldn't take too long to figure out I wasn't trying to base my musical career on Aha. That would be fairly, but there was really nobody I wanted to sound like. There were people that I like. David Bowie, I love David Bowie. Like I said, the only Never Let Me Down is the only record I kind of always was like about. Everything else, everything I love. I mean literally every single record. I think it's a shocking collection of brilliance from beginning to end, pretty
even
much.
His last record was,
it's one of the best things he ever did.
That's Mike's favorite Bowie record.
It's one of the best things he ever did. And I'll tell you what, so is Heathen. Everybody always ignores the stuff he did toward the end. And
Heathen's incredible. Heathen's incredible.
Fucking amazing. And you know, Reality maybe isn't as good as Heathen or
that one before it, the one right before it.
Yeah. That's the name's eluding me. Ours.
Yeah.
Like Ours is probably better, and Ours and Heathen are better than Reality, but Reality has its moments too. But like to me, I had a hard time identifying, like as a musician, like looking at somebody that like I think like there's some correlation between them and me. I couldn't get, because I'm totally the opposite of theatrical.
Yeah.
You know? I'm always what I am. And like, if I dressed different or was, you know, whatever, it was just because I felt like it. It was that, and that was how I was all the time. It wasn't dressing up to be, I mean, I might put a slightly nicer jacket on when I was on stage, but generally speaking, I'm always the same. And so I'm not acting. Somebody once said to me, it was like, I like the person. I'm going, that persona you're talking about is just me.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard for me to like identify with that. And so a lot of times I kind of more like identified. I also identified songwriters. Like if you said if you wanted to be able to bring more of somebody into what you do, I would be like John Hyatt and John Prine would probably.
John Prine is
because
genius.
It's the song. Like if you can write a song, you can put it into whatever genre you want. I mean, you know, there's John Hyatt songs like, you know, Iggy Pop fans, Something Wild was a John Prine as a John Hyatt song. And and so you can if you can write songs, and so that's kind of what I, you know, and of the glam people, all those people, I kind of more identified with older Lou Reed. You know, like after Street Hassle Lou Reed, that kind of like, I was like he just kind of, first of all, every video you see Lou Reed and like he seems so uncomfortable. He like just does not want to be there. He's just like stiff as a board, and they're trying to make him dance and stuff, and he's like, ugh.
Yeah, he's approaching Berlin at that point, and he's getting really, really weird in his own skin.
Yeah, well, the Berlin is like, that's way before that. I mean, Street Hassle would have been 7.
No, I mean when he legitimately took up residence in Berlin with the rest of them when they were all kicking around there. Berlin, the record.
Yeah, well, I mean like stuff like Growing Up in Public and Mistrial and all that stuff. That era, because there's also this kind of like. Some of the things the lyrics can be awkward and things can be awkward. And it's just like, I don't care. Fuck you.
Yeah.
They're awkward. Like when he, like before, not too long before he died, like somebody asked him if he was going to write I think the question was, are you going to write an autobiography to set the record straight? And his response was, what record? And fuck you. So, and so I kind of identify with him. I'm never, honestly, I joke about being a dick, but I'm usually not a dick. I'm actually generally nice to people, unless they give me a reason to not be nice to them. Then I'm a dick. Whereas Lou Reed, never met the man, but people I know that worked with him or reporters who dealt with him said he was a giant dick. Sure. And sometimes a lot of musicians don't like reporters, and whatever, man. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you in all honesty, I got an autograph from the man and like met him, not on a real personal level, just like signing stuff for us, and he was really fucking cool. He was really fucking cool. So in my opinion, he just didn't like reporters.
Well, he was, I mean, there's a lot of instances of him being a dick to people that he was close to too, but I mean, somebody might watch this and say like, oh yeah, well, what about that time? And so, you could say the same fucking thing. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there in the world who are like, he's a dick. What is he talking about? He's not a dick. Nobody's perfect.
No,
but his material from those later years, which sometimes gets dismissed, I think too. I mean, everybody loves New York, and everybody loves songs for Drella, and even Magic and Lost somewhat, but they forget about he had some other records that were kind of mixed in with those later day things that had some good stuff on them.
Yeah, I remember when people pissed on New York, though.
New York was a great record, man.
It's one of my favorites.
You're not allowed to make money.
I have gotten shit from people when I say that's my favorite Lou Reed record, like even over Velvet Underground stuff, which I'm a big Velvet Underground fan. Don't get me wrong, I love John Cale, I love all of them, but
if you include Velvet Underground records, and you had to ask me off the top of my head to say 5 in no particular order, Lou Reed Velvet Underground records, and then this is in no order, it would be Velvet Underground and Nico, Rock and Roll Heart, Coney Island Baby, New York, and Transformer.
Thank you.
Transformer none of those records I mentioned have a bad song on them.
No, they don't. And even like if you wanted to like expound upon it and put White Light, White Heat in there, like as a sixth, they're all flawless.
I like all the Velvet Underground records, but they're all wildly different. Like the third one's like a folk record. It's like Bob Dylan. The second one's like Crazy Town, and then the last one, Loaded, sounds like the Beatles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, pick a record, it's a different band, and but like the Lou Reed, I love that 70s, those two records in the mid 70s that were like kind of lots of saxophones, and I thought those records were amazing because it's this kind of thing and this almost jazzy stuff. And somewhere he had a quote where he said, when you can't play rock and you can't play jazz and you put them together, you really have something.
Yeah.
And I wish I could find somebody who could play a saxophone. Maybe they could help me out.
But they're street records, and I think that's what makes them so special.
But I mean, those records are. I mean, one of them was produced by Godfrey Diamond, which was like, it was like a disco producer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're slick as hell records, and then the Bells is much more kind of, it's the bridge between that stuff and the kind of like grown up Lou Reed stuff, and everybody loves Street Hassle, and I think it's okay, but I felt like that was like, we want the junkie Lou Reed back, and
that's a transitional
record.
record.
A bunch of songs about junkies, and everybody's like, "Yay, junkie Lou Reed is back!" And it's like, I could live without that. personally.
That was his beginning. He started in, heroin will be the death of me. Like that was the beginning. That was his dead. That was like full stop. That was where he started. Right.
Well, he used to simulate like he was shooting up on stage when he was doing the early 70s shows and stuff. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's not like it came out of the blue that people wanted to see that,
Right. But I mean, we all get over our own, edifices. Like this is who I emulated then.
Well, you need to change, I think. And I think for somebody like me, and I think probably Tara, they have like 1,000 times more fans than I have. That's a metaphysical certainty. So do most foreigner cover bands at the local bar. When you don't have a shit ton of fans, where you're not like, what is my impetus to try to like please the fans?
We don't worry about that. I mean,
I don't give a shit. I worry about pleasing me.
You got to listen to yourself at the end of the day.
And I don't listen to after I'm done recording them. I listen to them for a couple of times afterwards, and then I usually don't listen to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go back and listen to an old one. I'll be like, wow, this is pretty good. I thought it sucked.
I listened to Estrella, like not even the whole thing, but I listened to a couple tracks off Estrella like a month ago, and I was like, oh yeah, I like that song.
I listen to your records. I don't listen to mine.
Thank you. Well, here Tara's solo records.
I love that record.
Oh, well, there's two.
I only have the first one. I think how many do you have?
Two.
So I don't think I have the second one.
I think I can send you one.
The second one is actually better. The second one's actually better because it's going off the rails a little more, and it gets into places that feel like a person coming apart at the seams in the studio, and that kind of makes it for me. There's a maniacal chaos.
Every time I go into a studio, I record.
Well, it's probably more akin to someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
No. To me, it didn't feel that way. To me, it felt like expression of the absence of jubilation. Like there's a complete like Stygian abyss between you and the finished product. You know what I mean? Like if that makes sense.
That's a really good record. The thing is, I like all the Lycia records, and like sometimes I'll be like, I like Ionia the best, and then I'll start listening to Estrella.
I like Estrella the best,
and Cold, and I'll be like, man, like it's like I listen to a different record, and I like it. It's my favorite record is like different every time I listen to them. And there's what's the one I think you sent it to me. It's one that Mike did, and I don't think there's any vocals on it at all. It's very ambient. It has like a beige
solo record.
Is that the mic? Is it solo?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has kind of like a beige cover.
What about Bleak?
Well, you know what? Bleak, I have to admit this, and you can ask Mike about this. I thought like Bleak as a side project, I thought it sounded like Lycia.
It did, but I thought that's what you were talking about, because
that was back in the day when I was the publicist at Projekt. And so my attitude toward that was like, why are you calling this something different? We just spent all this time getting people to know Lycia, and you're going to call this new great record something else?
Yeah.
But I mean, but I also understand exactly how that is, because I have Illegal Teenage Bikini, which is really Thanatos. And I just wanted to be away from the Thanatos name. I was, for various reasons, I just didn't want, I was done with that. Right. And then I realized it was the record was, I'm like going, as long as I'm doing it, that's what it is. And I hate the name Thanatos, by the way. It's just hung around my neck right now. I can't get away from it. It's like herpes. It's like herpes.
I actually love it. I think it's great just because of the whole.
There's like 7 bands called Thanatos.
There's know.
There's some goth band from Italy.
There's a death metal band
in Chicago.
I like the death metal band Thanatos.
Yeah, well, the death metal band got back together, and I think that somebody started trying to scrub me off of the internet and stuff on their behalf, which I'm like, I don't give a shit.
I just know the answer as to why that Bleak record was called Bleak and not Lycia.
What was it?
Mike said that because he wanted a double album and another album out in the same year, and that was the only way he could get it done.
That makes sense.
Was that him and Sam didn't tell me that?
But if we could sidestep maybe the idea of, what inspired you. Maybe we could dive into what it was that kind of was the driving principle or force that made Thanatos come together in the beginning, because there has to be that one thing that just makes you want to not only make music but make music under this guise, this bubble. Like, what made that be
Well,
what gave that impetus for you?
I mean, I've played music my entire life. I started playing the guitar. I've played the guitar for, I think, 48 years. And I've taken, professional kind of lessons on other instruments like the mandolin and some things like that. And I always tell everybody I can play every stringed instrument except for a banjo, as long as you don't expect me to play them particularly well. So I've always played music of one sort or another, whether we're sitting on the couch playing it or whatever. So it was kind of second nature to me. And I wrote for a magazine that Sam ran in South Florida, a music magazine. And so he and I got together, and he started, when he first started doing music, we kicked back stuff back and forth with cassettes. It's actually funny because to let him hear what my voice sounded like, one of the songs I did was Southern Man by Neil Young, I think.
That's pretty awesome, actually.
And so we put out a cassette, and that's what we did. And it just kind of, the label was kind of in conjunction a little bit with the magazine. And so it came out, and nobody bought it because nobody really bought any of that stuff. And then he started doing Black Tape for a Blue Girl. I was in college, and I graduated and moved back to South Florida, and I was down here. And then I guess we decided to record. I don't remember exactly. You'd have to ask him where the idea to go back and revisit this and do a record. But it would have been 2000, like 92, 91 or 92. And I went out to LA and recorded the first half of the first record. I don't know. I there was no thought process that I recall being involved in. It was just kind of like it just seemed like a natural thing to do because I always did music and I'd always been interested in music and I always wrote songs. I just didn't do anything with them. I was always in bands that never played anywhere. When I was in college, we played, but they, some of those songs actually got recycled onto Thanatos too. Actually, at least one, the song "Tell Megiddo." But the original song "Tell Megiddo" started out slow, and then it was like, and I played bass in that band. And then it was like, doesn't it feel like it's over sometime? And it was like a punk rock song.
Yeah.
But when we got out there to play, it was like there was no bass guitar around. There was no nothing, so we just did it like an ambient kind of thing. But yeah, I don't really remember any impetus like making me say I want to do music, just because I always did it and I always wrote it. I just didn't think anybody was going to put it out. And then when Sam put that first record out, that's why there's like 500 songs on that record, because that record came out and it was like I've been writing songs for so long, I had enough stuff for a bunch of records. And I put that record out, and we put it out, and shockingly enough, we started working on another. I had the other one, the second one, already partially written while we were still working on finishing the first one, and I had the idea for it. The first one is not really a concept record; it's just a collection of all the songs that were written for.
Yeah.
And some of them are written from Sam lyrics, and some of them are written from my lyrics. And I usually would write a basic musical part, and then he would add his parts, and then. The second record is much more me. It's I don't think there's any Sam lyrics on that record at all. And I think part of that was because Sam was working on some records of his own, and he was not going to toss good, lyrics over to me to use. So I had to use my own crappy lyrics. I'm kidding. I shouldn't say stuff like that because I tend to be self-deprecating, and sometimes people are like, "Oh, but you're a nice boy." I'm like, the truth is, I have an irrationally high opinion of myself. And the reason I'm self-deprecating is because I realize that my opinion of myself with regards to these things is irrationally high. So I'm trying to not be a dick by being self-deprecating. It's my theory on the subject anyway. But
to kind of like add into your maybe irrationally high opinion of yourself, Blisters is
with regard to music. I don't have a rationally high opinion of myself in general,
but lyrically speaking, music. Anyway, like that is, it's not a concept record, but it all fits together very
Well,
seamlessly.
it is meant to be very much on a theme. It's very much about getting burned, and it's like some of it's personal, some of it is broader and political, some of it's about science. I mean, Darkwave Whisper is a song about science. It's about quantum physics, actually. But it's also about the implications of some of the things that were being discovered then about quantum physics, which in some cases now we know really aren't true, but at the time we thought that they were. The second album is very much about pointless charges, like pointless endeavors, and also how my belief that so what, is the charge of the Light Brigade. Maybe it was stupid, but is it less brave because it was stupid? No. Jose Marti, people like that. And I tried to write songs about some of that stuff, like the Jose Marti and the Charge of the Light Brigade, but I already had the song Janissaries, which is very similar. It's based on a particular battle where they knew they were going to get wiped out, and they attacked. They did attack anyway, and Janissaries were like slave soldiers in one of the caliphates. I don't remember. Might have been. I don't remember which one, to be honest with you. Back then, I would have known, but I was sharper then. So, yeah, I mean, I can't tell you when the idea to play live jumped into my head, and it was actually at the Troubadour, seeing Chris Connolly on the Shipwreck tour, and I was like, I should fucking be playing this music. And I had played live in the past with other things that nobody really gave a shit about. And I was like, and I was also at that time already planning on moving back to Chicago because I didn't like living in LA that much. And so that's how that was. Honestly, that was what that record, Shipwreck, and then that show was like. I didn't think. I mean, I was fully aware I couldn't sing like Chris Connolly or play like anybody in that band. That band was like, if I remember, Bill Rieflin was playing drums and Tucker on guitar, and who the heck else was there? It was like a freaking.
They were a who's who. They were a who's
who. And they
were
very much so. It was like there was nobody in that that live band. Good to find people who are competent musicians to play with you who are younger and can have the time to get away. And I know some, but finding ones that are reliable is the trick.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, because finding a reliable musician is like finding a black pearl in
musicians are all pains in the ass.
Of course, especially drummers. But there's something about this transcends.
It's just 3 tours. I think we had like 5 drummers.
Of course you did. And that transcends like hardcore punk or whatever kind of music you're into. No matter what scene you're in, no matter what kind of music you're playing, find a drummer. Good luck. I'll wait for it.
Well, bass players too.
Big Paul Ferguson.
But bass players who can actually play is another trick.
Yeah, that's kind of I was the bass player in half of the bands I was in, but I was also the singer, so I was the fill-in bass player.
I remember that one of the bands I was in when I was a youngster that nobody ever heard of. I don't even remember the names of them. When I was in college, it was like I remember when this guy I knew in high school came. He was delivering a bed to one of my roommates, and he was like, "Hey, you play music, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "We're starting a band." He's like, "Do you play bass?" And I was like, "Yeah." I never played a bass in my fucking life.
Yeah.
I just went in there and played the bass. That's, it's rock music. Really only, I'm going, I can play the bass, but I really only need 1 string.
It's not like you're joining Fugazi where you have to play everything.
I'm not Jaco Pastorius, but
right.
I can keep basic rhythm with a bass. But yeah, so I started to say that I'm working on a new record, and my idea is to kind of make it sound like that live record, but in a studio setting, but then have some stuff that's based around drum stuff and then do some acoustic stuff. And in my perfect world, I would record some of it here with William Faith, some of it with Sam Rosenthal, and some of it with Jason Donnelly in Los Angeles. And Jason's always like, yeah, let's do something. And then, he's busy as hell, and he, has a life. And so he, it's difficult to get that put that together. So I may have to find somebody else to do the programming. The problem is there are a few human beings who can do programming that I've experienced that are like him. And so if I'm going to do it, but that song, it's an album it's going to be called Love Songs for the Indigent. And I'm going to start on it next year sometime. I'm already writing it, but I'm going to start recording it sometime next year, I think. And I always say this, but I'm not, every record could be the last one, but I think 10 is a nice number. I mean, it doesn't mean I'd stop doing music, but doing collections of songs, what's the point anymore?
Well, it's a singles market now.
Just shit out a couple songs and put them up on Spotify and hope for the best.
And it's kind of really disheartening for me because all of us the three of us anyway, not all of us in my listening sphere, but the three of us grew up in an album format era. I was born in the mid 70s. Like I grew up, if you're going to listen to a band, you listen to the whole record.
Mm-hmm.
You drop the needle, side A, maybe you flip it once to side B. People younger than me, they got the CD, but I was a record guy, and then on the cassettes, and even cassettes would auto play to side B. I was of the vinyl era still. You got to flip it over. You got to listen through one other. But the album experience was important.
Well, vinyl was, that was still the thing until I was in college. I mean, I was
still is to me, but
vinyl's just inconvenient to me. I don't have anything against it, but I find it to be, and people ask me, why don't you put out the part of the reason I got the Endless Night Inside done is I was thinking of remixing and then mastering it for vinyl. And it's, the problem is that if you cut out all the crap, the end stuff, which is like the hidden track, it's still 55 minutes, and that's not really that's a little long. So
it's not really to a record. Yeah.
It should be a double record. And it's like, I just can't believe there's the interest in it. And then there's the delays in pressing now that it's like you put out a vinyl record, even if I could raise the money, then I'm going to wait 2 years before they get the records back to me. And I don't really want to have that hanging over my head. If somebody can tell me how to find a place that'll press it faster, hey, but
Czech Republic.
Yeah, but it isn't. That's not true. They're backed up for years. And
no, so there's a company right now that could turn it over in 3 months.
But they say that, but they're not. Trust me.
Really? Because I just hit them up for a 7-inch that I'm trying to do.
If it's changed, it's changed recently. Everybody I know is running into this problem. And the thing is that almost all of them go through the same company in the Czech Republic. Like there's some places you'll buy from here and they're getting their stuff done by the same company there. And there's some Canadian places and there's some American places that maybe can turn it around faster, but it's really expensive.
And they're the lathe cut companies. They're not extruding and pressing.
Lathe cuts are totally different.
They are, yeah.
And those you can get like 10 of them made, but it's like and there's a couple of places in the United States they'll do it for you, but they're like, we don't send out proofs, and we don't send out,
test pressings
or anything. And I'm just like, fuck you. Yeah, I'm going to give you $4,000, $5,000, and then it comes and they all are shit, and you tell me to go screw myself, and it's like, that ain't happening. And so it's just it's a tough thing to do. And I have nothing against vinyl, but and then with the re-releasing old stuff, Lycia can do it. You have a record company that wants to do it. No record companies want to release my stuff. There's not enough of a market for it.
That's ridiculous. That's fucking ridiculous to me because I remember reviewing Blisters in my fanzine and people going nuts over that fucking nuts.
Blisters is like the first two records are one thing. It's the length of the records. Poncho and Lefty
Poncho and Lefty, that's a Townes Van Zandt song that's fucking flawless. Let's face facts. That's flawless.
I also like the song. I mean, you may notice there's 2 Guy Clark songs on there. And, Magdalene is one. I'm not going to do a lot off that record because I feel like, as much as I say I don't want to I don't cater to what other people want when I'm playing. When I'm playing live, I'm maybe a little bit different than that. I think a lot, like we're playing these goth things, and I don't think people are necessarily going to want to hear a bunch of country songs. They're not going to want to hear Chris Christopherson and shit.
They make sense together, though. To me, they make sense together because they come from the same place. I think punk and old country, original country, and quote unquote goth are all part and parcel.
They're very sonically different. I think the philosophy behind them is very, very different.
I think the mood is the same.
I think that like country music, a lot of the country music that's on that record were written by people who were like very much the anti-punk. They're professional musicians and professional songwriters who were writing songs and recording stuff. Doesn't mean it was bad, but they were doing it as their career. And punk rock was very kind of, even though it was bullshit, the facade was it was kind of anti-careerist kind of stuff. So the philosophy behind the true believer punk bands, that was true of, but there weren't very many of those.
Yeah,
I mean, let's face it. But the goth stuff. I mean, I think I don't know. I think topically sometimes there's things that maybe are the same, but I think that's true of almost all kind of rock music. We're all singing about people are singing about, getting drunk and having a shitty life and sex and fucking
I think what I'm talking about
physics. Oh no, wait, that's just me.
I think what I'm talking about is just the murder balladeering of it all.
Yeah, I mean
where does Nick Cave end and Johnny Cash begin?
I would say where does Johnny Cash end and Nick Cave begin?
I'm going backwards, but still in all, it's
Nick Cave copped onto that a little bit later.
Yeah,
and so I think and he was very like maybe obviously he did the record Murder Ballads,
right?
But I mean I think there's just a natural sense of those themes are going to be in all sorts of music. If you listen to like Norteño music, you're going to find those themes.
Yeah.
If you listen to all music from almost anywhere, that's what those songs. If you go back and read, it's pointless to read them in translation, and that's the only way I've ever seen them. But even if you go look at like Islamic poetry, they're writing about the same things, and so So it's a kind of you are correct. I mean, I think you're correct. I think it's a overarching thing, but I still think the things are very different. Now, the point of doing the country thing was to kind of show the pointlessness of genre, and this is something Tara and I have talked about a lot. Like the genre stuff is like kind of, and it always sounds like we're ragging on goth, and we're not. We're ragging on genre is just a way to sell you a T-shirt. Yeah, and I don't care about selling people T-shirts anymore, to be honest with you. And although if anybody wants to buy a T-shirt, I'll put it and so I don't have to worry about well, I mean, it's like when a music has a dark sensibility, but the thing is, like, people would be like it sounds like folk music. I'm like, play my music for a Pete Seeger fan and see how they react to it. It is not going to be a positive.
Pete Seeger is making protest music. This is
but it's folk music, and any of that stuff you could go back and say pick another person. You could pick Phil Oakes or even like somebody more polished like Harry Chapin or somebody like that. But find one of their fans, play them my music, and they'll hate it. And or somebody who listens to old English folk ballads, they'll hate it. And it's because while there are similarities, there's also drastic differences. And the same thing's true of goth. Goth. That's why it was disturbing to play at goth clubs sometimes when you are doing the style of music that I do, because it is very much not. Yeah, Sisters of Mercy. It is. I mean, it's probably closer to Bauhaus because it's a little more. Some of it's a little more experimental, but
that's because Bauhaus was aping. And as much as I love Bauhaus, they were aping a lot of Iggy and that whole thing, like the Spiders from Mars, and like that's what they were into. That was the impetus of the whole.
Well, I think there's a lot of punk and there's a lot of punk in that. There's a lot of all kinds of different things. I mean, it's not an accident that Peter Murphy covered Perubu. Yeah, and that's I think that kind of stuff. And I think pretty clearly, like you listen to the guitar, people are like both Love and Rockets and Bows, people are a little more dismissive of the guitar parts in that music than they should be, because it's not necessarily about like, to me, playing difficulty like Angway Malmsteen is really hard to play like that. But why would I want to listen to it?
I'd rather listen to Per Uber or PIL, in my opinion.
Some of the PIL guitar players are absolutely amazing.
Sure, but they weren't like overplaying.
Right. But I mean, what I'm getting at with that is that he was dialing in sounds that were appropriate and playing the appropriate parts in those songs. And that's what matters, is that not trying to play a lot of notes. And that's one of my problems with some of the Frank Zappa stuff, was the virtuosity was like the point. And then, like, yes, I always joke about bands like that where like all their songs are 9 minutes long because everybody has to get a solo. Yeah, and the drum solo, the ukulele solo, the bongo solo, everybody gets a solo, and it's just like, not every song needs a solo. And I used to leave breaks in songs for guitar parts and stuff, and because I was like bothered by the fact all my songs were like 2 minutes long. And the Christmas songs, I was like, there's no breaks in them. Yeah, because it's like Christmas songs should be 2 minutes long. Nobody wants to hear a 9 minute long Christmas song, except for that Pogues one that everybody likes. Fairy Tale, yeah.
Fairy Tale in New York, yeah. I'm sorry.
But so yeah, I mean, it's interesting to talk about, because like I'm saying, like you're saying, like there's the links between these, and I'm thinking, yeah, but there's differences too, and it's like, but there are definitely, I mean, there's all music is kind of linked together in one way or another. And it's funny, as I've gotten older, a lot of young people, and I always find this weird when people are old and they're like, they're angry at some young musician, or like, that's Billie Eilish really makes me angry. I'm like, why do you give a shit? What's wrong with Billie Eilish? It's pop music, and it's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And it's like, in some of these people, like I've heard some of her music and I have nothing against it, but I'm sure if I kept listening, I would find stuff that I really like Lady Gaga. When she first appeared, I thought it was all gimmick.
I like her.
I do too. I like her a lot, and she's not the only one. And there's a lot of these people that are making popular music, and it's like it makes old people angry, because I'm not entirely sure why, because it's not what we listened to when we were kids. And I'm like, when I was a kid, the music sucked.
Yeah, well, with
Boston and Foreigner, and that's why we all like punk rock, because it didn't suck.
Yeah, we got into punk because it was the antithesis of all the garbage. But when I hear Lady Gaga, I hear Jim Steinman style production, which makes me hear Floodland by Sisters of Mercy. That's no mistake, because she fucking loves Sisters of Mercy.
Well, that song, that album she did, that's kind of more, it's the more toned down one. I forget the name, but it's the one with like the profile view of hers, is like, it's very much kind of almost like all that. I'm trying to think of the bands, like it's like a good version of, it's like Jackson Brown, I mean, it's like that stuff. And I'm not a big fan of, to be honest with you, Jackson Brown. There's some good songs, but it's just like that's the kind of music that is. And I admire, I mean, people are, Tara and I talk about being shocking people with people we like, and it's not a recent thing. I love Shakira, like the Donde Era is a fantastic record.
I love flamenco guitar, so anytime anyone brings like any that sort of a flavor to pop music, I'm going to appreciate it.
Well, parts of the record, the De Donde Eres, is I mean, some of it sounds like Dead Can Dance.
Sure.
And I just think she can be a pretty. Do I love everything she does? No, there's like pop stuff. I don't love it, but who cares? I mean, I don't get worried about it. And she's a little older. I mean, 20 years ago, she's was when I first heard her. But it's like, some of the newer stuff that comes out that makes like old people angry just cracks me up. It's like,
it's not our world anymore.
But also listening to like people like, going, really? Let's run that. Let's go look at the freaking the top hits in 1980. It was like Toto, and all that stuff.
Furthermore, wouldn't it be sort of disturbing if young people were listening to shit that we were listening to?
Well, they are, unfortunately.
But the thing of it is, like, Mike always makes this point. He's like, that would have been like me listening to fucking stuff from the 1920s as a teenager.
Yeah, not even Sinatra. It would be like listening to, exactly. It would be like listening to Bing Crosby or something. Maybe he's a little weird. And I mean, I'm always baffled by, like, there's some bands like Misfits that all the kids seem to like. And it's just like, to me, I mean, I used to listen to Walk Among Us and what's the one with the skull, red skull on it?
Well, that depends. There's
It's the one that came out either right before or right after that, Walk Among Us. And to me, they're like the only 2 records I give a shit by them. And it's like, and
they only really had 3, man, to be honest with you.
I saw them live at Riot Fest a couple years ago, and it was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was absolutely appalling. And you couldn't even recognize the songs. And he was like, I thought the man was going to die on stage.
You don't. It's just, it's really
I mean, now keep in mind, I love that record, but I'm like, when I see like young people like wearing Misfits shirts, I'm kind of like, that was like that was out when I was like, it was a little bit before my time, actually. Those records came out like, I was probably 13 or 14 when they came out. When did Walk Among Us come out? 82?
82, 83.
Yeah, so I was like 15 or 16. But
and let's face the facts is that the people that get butthurt about what kids listen to now don't have good musical taste. They're all into like fucking Journey and like Foreigner, and I mean, no offense to Journey.
Journey is what they are. I mean, but Foreigner and all that kind of crap.
But like, do you really expect teenagers to be from right now to be listening to that? Like, that should be their choice of music over what
dinosaur rock. They like dinosaur rock.
One of my most commonly repeated things when I'm discussing music is right now there is so much great music out there, and I can never articulate who they are because a lot of them are bands I discovered like last week, and it's like, you know, there's stuff that's not necessarily that's been around for like maybe a decade and some change, but people like Zola Jesus. Is there anything out there better than Zola Jesus?
Absolutely not.
Father John Misty is like the new Elton John, man. He's like 10. He's better than Elton John.
That Hollywood Forever Cemetery song is.
There isn't a thing I've heard by him I didn't like, and I was kind of off put by like the name Father John Misty, motherfucking stage name.
That's the guy from
Get out of my yard. And then I saw him, and I was like at like Lollapalooza early in the day one time, and I didn't even see the whole set, and I was like, oh, he's really, really good. And then I started buying the records, and those are the bigger named acts. There's a bunch of like smaller bands that are out there plugging away. That, I mean, there's some stuff here in Chicago. There's a band called Pink Frost is one. Mm. There's a couple other ones that I really think are good. Horse Girl is like this kind of, there's somewhere between like the Ramones and post punk. I think it's Horse Girl. They're from Chicago. And you know, I mean, there's just listen to some new music, and I'm an old fart and I'm listening to new music. So yeah, exactly, Terry. Don't get on kids who are listening. You're so much worse. That's the fucking old person thing to say. Oh, everything was better.
It's about everything. It's about everything though, because like me and my friend Diana laugh about this all the time. Is like, you'll see these memes where it'll be like, can this kid even use a telephone? It's like, why would they need to use a fucking rotary dial telephone? Yeah. You know how to fucking butter? Do you know how to like use a laundry mangle when you were a kid? Like, why would you?
How many of these motherfuckers like long for the dial phone? I mean, who wants that? Take a half an hour to dial a phone number.
Why would they know something that's irrelevant to their life?
And the thing about like complaining about like, they don't teach them cursive writing anymore. Who gives?
First of all, they do. They do.
And who gives a shit anyway? I don't care.
You won't be able to read the Declaration of Independence and the blah blah blah.
You should look at they taught me how to do it. You should see what it looks like when I write stuff down. It looks like a monkey wrote it. I can't read my own damn. So I have lyrics I wrote down, and I'm trying to figure out what they say. And I'm like, what the fuck is that word? Is it monkey? I can't tell. And so, I mean, I have no, like, I have no patience for any of that, because you know what, young people today, like the people that I have had experience being around, that are like teenagers to like mid-20s, are way better than my generation.
1,000%.
Way better.
And they don't care about genre. That the whole genre thing.
Exactly.
It's a bunch of shit. It's a bunch of shit. It never made sense to me.
That's my other thing, and I'll tell you when I realized it. My son and I went to this thing called Picnic, which is, and I don't know if it still goes on here, but it's in the summer. It's way out in the boondocks. It takes you forever to drive out there. But I think that there was one year where we went to see, I want to say Linkin Park was playing, and then there was one year where it was Bush and Yeah Yeahs, and Like, there's a bunch of different bands, but they had a thing in the parking lot where smaller, lesser known bands would play. And then they had a big, it's Tinley Park here. And it's a big, like there's seats and then there's a big grass thing behind it. It's a decent place to see a concert. And so we went, and there was a band, like, what's that band that's, they started out being kind of a little folky, and then they started sounding like Led Zeppelin. And the name's eluding me. I can't believe I can't remember them. But they were playing, and there were all these guys with backwards baseball caps. Yeah! And right behind them was Capital Cities, which is, by the way, a fabulous song, and it's a fabulous record. And I'm thinking, oh man, these guys are gonna throw rocks at these dudes. And guess what? They're all dancing. Woo! Like,
Yeah.
They didn't give two hairy shits. Like, oh god, I can't believe I can't remember the name of it, because I love the band I'm talking about. It's like 3 words.
Yeah, and they're a bunch of young guys.
And then they played this hard rock, and then they played this stuff that's basically disco, and then there's somebody playing like something completely different after that, and then we're all going in to see Bush and the yeah. No, was it Bush? Who's the one that has Machine Head? Is that Bush?
Bush.
Yeah,
Bush.
yeah. Bush.
And what's funny about Bush is not one but 2 of the members are like old school members of the New York hardcore scene.
Yeah,
are in Bush right now.
And I was, it's one of those bands I don't know that much about, but when I saw them, I realized I knew a bunch of their songs and stuff. But it's just like that kind of mixing pot of music, and being there with all these young people who were like, they didn't give a shit what genre you put any of these bands in. I think I want to say, what's that band that's really loud? Oh my god, it's hard to sing their songs because you can never. It's one of those bands that sounds like it's a woman singer, but it's a dude.
The Darkness.
Silver Sun Pickups.
Silver Sun. Oh, they're fantastic.
And they're the loudest band I think I've ever heard in my life. It was like, I've seen them 2 or 3 times, and it's just like, I was like, my hair was blown back when I saw them. And it's like, you don't think that music when you listen to their records is going to be loud, and you are wrong. It's like, it's like a jet taking off.
Their second album is fucking brilliant.
Like that band, and then a band playing disco, and then yeahs, and then like I want to say like AWOL Nation or somebody like that was playing too. And it's just like the genres are all we're all over the place, and that was when I first noticed it. And then I would go to festivals, and I would notice the same thing. And I also noticed that a lot of the festivals, whether it was, I used to go to all the festivals in Chicago. I haven't gone for a few years, partially because they keep having the same fucking bands play, and also because like Lollapalooza is now like, I don't want to see any more ODing 14-year-olds anymore. The music isn't the problem. It's the fact that it's just like, it's suburban teenagers coming into the city to get wasted. And you know what? When I was 14, I would have done the same thing.
Me
but
too.
I don't need to see it now.
Yeah. And especially dads.
It's the same bands over and over and over and over again. And so I get kind of tired of it. But like Pitchfork used to have a day that was a lot of hip hop, and then they would mix in hip hop on at Riot Fest. That's where I saw Joey Badass for the first time. And then Lollapalooza would have a lot of hip hop. The second time I saw Joey Badass was actually at Lollapalooza. And I noticed the kids I was watching, they're like looking at kids, they're listening to like stuff that's basically folk music, and then they're walking over to listen to Joey Badass, or they're listening to St. John or somebody like that early in the day. And like you said, the genre crap doesn't matter to them. It does matter to some subgenre people who really attach their identity. There's some people who are like punk is all that matters, or goth is all that matters. And those people are usually difficult. They're like people that have something that's a problem.
Even hardcore right now, though. There's a band in hardcore that is called Turnstile that are blowing up in such a major way. They're on Conan O'Brien because they're involving trip hop, they're involving pop music, they're involving like rap, and they're so good at it, and it's so well wrought and so well thought out. But it's still a hardcore band because the breakdowns are still there. It's still fast. It's still like gnarly and thrashy, but they really craft it and put love into it. And these young guys, you look at them, and a lot of people my age bemoan them, but I think on a really macro level, everyone else who's seeing this, including my brother, who I kind of like cut his teeth on hardcore and he got away from it, even though it's a part of him. he called me up one night and was like, dude, did you see this new band Turnstile? And he's like into pop music. That's what his deal is. He's like, this band Turnstile is like everything right now. I'm like, yeah, dude, I know. I've been listening to him for like 8 years.
I've heard the name, but it's like hardcore and punk rock. I've kind of felt like that sort of genre has kind of left me cold in recent years. I think it's kind of
they'll change your mind.
I mean, there's a lot of hard rock bands in recent years that I've actually kind of liked. And there's stuff that kind of like Woven Hand and stuff like that. I think.
Woven Hand are phenomenal.
Rock bands, but it's not really punk rock, like that kind of punk rock thing. Kind of, it seems kind of played to me. Now, if you're adding kind of influence of, like, I'm saying that, and then I'm saying I like Horse Girl, and they definitely have that sort of vibe for them too. But it's a genre maybe I should go back and revisit and listen to some of the newer stuff, just because I got sick of it. There's so much of it that was just the same shit over. I remember hearing some of the Orange County bands back 100 years ago. I'm thinking, is this some unreleased Clash song? And it's like, oh, it sounds exactly like the fucking Clash. And it was some
Op Ivy sounded like the Clash. Even though I love Op Ivy, they were like the Clash.
But usually I like songs that tell stories, and that's why some of the punk rock bands that I really like, they were telling me a story. Sometimes it was the context of like that's where the protest songs. There's a lot of protest songs in that. The
Clash.
Genre.
The Clash are
not just them, but a lot of bands. I mean, the hip hop stuff, a lot of it is like, I mean, go back and listen to, like, I always bring up Brenda. Was it?
Brenda's Got a Baby.
Yeah, the 2-pack song. Like,
yep.
That's a protest song. That's a serious song. That's a serious record.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I don't know what all the influences are, but it's not shocking that you would hear that in sometimes people used to compare me to bands I didn't know who they were at the time, like John Sebastian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, who the fuck is John Sebastian? And they're like, and the only thing I could figure out that he did that I knew was the Welcome Back Kotter theme.
Yeah,
like, it sounded like the Welcome Back Kotter guy. And then people would say Nick Drake, and I don't get that at all. Because
Nick Drake, he lays on the mellow in it, and he was very depressed. Like, the guy committed suicide.
Yeah, it's that music is way too depressing for me. I can't listen to it. Well, Harry Chapin's was saying, I was listening. There was a station I was out, and it was like listening to it was all Harry Chapin songs, and I'm like, can you change this? Because these songs make me want to blow my brains out.
He wrote a song about my hometown. 50,000 pounds of banana.
Cats in the Cradle. What's the other one that won about? She was gonna be an actress, and I was gonna learn to fly. I'm like, going, turn this shit off, man. Anyway, good talking to you guys.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, Tara.
Bye.
Night, guys.
See ya.
See ya. And there it is, folks. Part of a very, very long and incredible conversation with Pat Ogle. This is one of those episodes that took a very, very big chunk of time because we just got into a rhythm and we stayed in that rhythm. So, if you are a subscriber to this podcast, you can get that entire interview uncut, commercial free, the whole thing. All you have to do is either head over to my Instagram or Facebook, or you can head over to wherever you listen to podcasts, and you could find where to go to support the Book of Very, Very Bad Things. In doing so, if you support us at the monthly or yearly level, you get at least one extra episode per month. You get the soundtrack compilation that has just about everyone from season 1 of the podcast giving a song. Also, you will have the opportunity to shop in a members only store that will be dropping in the new year. We'll have t-shirts, sweatshirts, fanzines, all sorts of goodies for you fine folks. I'm sorry, it's getting around that time of year. I'm starting to get a little verklempt. I get a little head cold and my voice goes to crap. It happens. But anyway, listen, folks. The best thing you can do to support this podcast, outside of financially, and probably more importantly, is to share my social media content, tell your friends about the podcast, rate it, review it, and hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts. That lets all the other listeners and advertisers and pretty much everyone on earth know that this podcast is something you enjoy. It's like a vote. It's democratic. It's the only thing left that truly is democratic. You can vote by enjoying. Just hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We would appreciate it. I already do. So from all of us at 3:33 a.m. Studios, this has been the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. She's been Tara. He's been Pat. I've been Peter. You've been beautiful. Good night, everyone. And a big shout out to Word for Word Interpretation for continuing to support this endeavor of ours. Go look for them at www.wordinterpretation.com. And I hope you're enjoying your holidays. I'll talk to you soon. We have another episode coming up this Saturday. Good night, everybody.